Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I wanted to welcome you to the Questioning Civil Disobedience Panel Discussion, sponsored by the Library Committee of St. Mark's. My name is Bill Bynum. I'm chair of the Library Committee, and I wanted to thank the Library Committee for the food, helping to organize this, and to John, our sexton, for helping set things up as well. We've had several lectures and panel discussions. It started off with Canon Alan Tull giving a talk last February on Gnosticism in the early church. We had a panel discussion on Darwin and faith. We have an upcoming event November 15th on sculpting Darwin's life to celebrate the sesquicentennial of the publication of Origin of Species. So look for that. I wanted to say a few words of introduction, and I think I'd like to start by reading a short paragraph here from Utah History to Go, an article written by Alan Kent Powell called Utah and Vietnam Conflict. And there's a paragraph that I think is interesting. It says, Utah's first protest march, this is for the Vietnam War, occurred in downtown Salt Lake City on April 18, 1965, with 40 demonstrators. 4.5 years later, the demonstrators had increased 100-fold. On October 15, 1969, more than 4,000 demonstrators participated in nearly a full day of protest, or moratorium, as it was called, which began with speeches at a teach-in held in the University of Utah Ballroom, Union Building, and continued with a march from Reservoir Park down South Temple Street to the Federal Building at 100 South and State Street, where Reverend G. Edward Hallett of St. Mark's Episcopal Cathedral read the names of Utahns killed in Vietnam, and other speakers called for an immediate withdrawal from Vietnam. The demonstration was peaceful, with only one teenage girl arrested on the charge of displaying a flag or banner with intent to engender disloyalty to the government of the United States. Father Ed sent me this message a while back, and he wasn't up to coming this afternoon, but I just wanted you to see that St. Mark's has a tradition with civil disobedience, and Nancy Appleby was there. What prompted Dick Wonder was there as well? Okay. And what prompted the Library Committee in organizing this panel is thinking about current events, basically, I think. Thinking about Tim DeChristopher bidding on oil and gas leases, thinking about the financial crisis and economic disparity, the broader environmental crisis, and the wars that are going on right now. So we want to reflect on civil disobedience in service of the mission of the Library Committee, which is to promote the spiritual development of St. Mark's parishioners and friends. There are 3 panelists today. They will each give opening statements of about 10 minutes each, and then we'll have a question and answer. Speaking first will be Michael Popich, seated in the middle there. He's philosophy professor at Westminster College, PhD from SUNY Binghamton, with interest in the Holocaust, biomedical and environmental ethics, hate and torture in a post-9/11 world, genocide in Africa, comparative religion, and violence in the Middle East. He'll talk about history and origin of the ideas of civil disobedience. Speaking next will be Chris Jane Nordmeyer. She received her PhD in sociology from the University of Utah and is professor of sociology at Westminster College. Her research areas are gender, family, aging, care work, human sexuality, and research methods. And we hope that she provides her academic perspective on looking at civil disobedience, as well as offering maybe some examples of different approaches to civil disobedience, such as those that came out of the feminist movement. Speaking third will be Bill Tibbitts, a member of our congregation, who works for Crossroads Urban Center. And he's lived in Utah for 20 years, received his Juris Doctorate from the University of Utah College of Law in 2001. 3 years before that, received a Master's in Fine Arts and Creative Writing from the University of Utah. And his first job out of law school was working as the anti-hunger advocate project director for Crossroads Urban Center, where he still lives. During his 8 years working at Crossroads, he's led efforts to create the Anti-Hunger Action Committee, which is a membership organization for food pantry clients that works to organize low-income people to advocate for policy changes. He sent me a flyer of an upcoming event that he is involved in organizing, and it's called Maverick Hour at the Utah Capitol Complex. These individuals are holding up Sarah Palin masks in front of their face.
Oh.
It's scheduled for October 21st, 1:30 to 2:30 at Utah State Capitol. And it says, "Come ask Governor Herbert to stand up to the oil companies." In 2007, Governor Sarah Palin signed a bill increasing the tax oil companies pay for drilling Alaska's oil to 25%. Here in Utah, it's 5%. So I want to offer just a little bit of background, and then we'll turn it over to the panelists. For starters, what is civil disobedience? Is it just speaking truth to power? One definition from John Rawls calls it public, nonviolent, conscientious act contrary to law, usually done with the intent to bring about a change in the policies or laws of the government. Where did it come from? We want to hear about some of its origins in the history of ideas in Judeo-Christian heritage and elsewhere. How does it intersect with issues of ultimate concern and spirituality? And what are some other perspectives? When is it justified? Can it just be an individual act of conscience? How must it be connected to the broader society and community norms? When is it effective? Should it only be a weapon of last resort? Isn't it better in almost all cases to act within the law to effect change? And I know Bill's going to speak a little bit about challenges to balancing civil disobedience versus working within the law. First, for some initial audience participation, I want to mention a few well-known or not so well-known acts of civil disobedience and ask for a show of hands if you believe these acts described constitute justifiable acts of civil disobedience. First, Henry David Thoreau, where we got the name civil disobedience from. The library actually has volumes of his works. He refused to pay taxes to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to protest the U.S. war with Mexico that he viewed as expansionist. By show of hands, is that a justifiable act of civil disobedience? Gandhi refused to remove his turban when requested by a judge to do so in South Africa, and encouraged the South African Indian community to violate the law and not comply with the government's request that they register with the state. The suffragette movement, where British women and American and others chained themselves to rails and set fire to mailboxes to protest their lack of voting privileges early in the